Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Schofield. My friends call me Scofie, and you have just stumbled across another episode of Scofie Sessions. If this is your first time here, Scofie Sessions is my shameless excuse to hang out with friends of mine, peers in the industry, and folks that I just find darn fascinating. So if you're here with us today, I'm really grateful for you. And today's special guest is no exception. More on him in a moment. But today's topic for the day is all about customer retention, customer success, and the question that we're answering today: how do you know which clients will leave you this year? Joseph Loria, the founder of Retention CX, on deck. Joseph, so great to have you here today. Introduce yourself to our viewers.
Jonathan, thank you for having me. Hey, audience, Scofie audience. Joseph Loria here, just outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. I have spent, 2 decades plus in startups and scale-ups, mostly tech-based, also services, and have been on a mission for those 2 decades to figure out exactly how to get customers to stay longer, and buy more. Do that through my own company called Retention CX, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more later as we go.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. What's the weather like in Indy right now?
It's gloomy, so I'm glad to be on this sunny chat with you because I need some sunshine in my day, and it ain't coming from outside right now.
I'll be your sunshine today, Joseph. So good stuff.
Appreciate that. I need it.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you Greenville's nice. It's not today, but
No.
maybe it gets better. But all right. So the title for today's session is your hidden growth engine and how to turn it on. 3 bullet points that we just kind of arbitrarily slap together, and we reserve the right to go down as many rabbit trails and jump on as many soapboxes as we want to. Probability versus possibility, immediate wins, long-term play, real-world examples. Just to kind of kick off the conversation here, folks that I know that are all about customer success and customer retention, I feel like you guys, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys get really passionate about, or I should say, you feel a certain kind of way about all of the attention sales and marketing gets, sometimes to the detriment of customer success and working on retention and reducing churn. Tell us how you really feel, Joseph.
Oh man, you just opened up a deep, dark trench. I remember the first job I ever had, and I was an engineer, medical device company, doing essentially project management. And the sales team would have an annual meeting, and that meeting was in Florida, in Orlando.
Right.
And they rented out Universal Studios and had like some 80s has-been band play for them. I want to say it was Huey Lewis in the News. And I remember the engineers also got a conference. It was at the O'Hare Hilton. And I think we had some like buffet lunch and, and maybe a DJ if we were lucky. So like from the very start of my career, there was this clear demarcation between sales. Now, what I learned, of course, as I progressed, is I never really wanted to be in sales. I think it's a really hard job. And so as my career progressed, I ended up building a really good relationship with salespeople because I think it's a really hard job. And then you really want it, like, man, if I could do all that hard work of finding this new client, how can I at least shuttle them, through the process and meet the promise of what sales, told them.
Yeah.
But yeah, and gosh, even in the probably 60 or so board meetings I attended in the 5 separate startups and scale-ups I was at, I think in any one of those meetings, 84%, that's just a stat I made up, but 84% of the time was spent on sales pipeline, deal velocity, deal size, new logos, et cetera. And then, we reserve the whatever that is 16% of the time for everything else. But yeah, sales does suck the oxygen in the room, but that's on purpose for growth companies.
Well, the real ones, if you've ever led a sales team at a mid-level enterprise or a technology organization that's got a pretty well-structured growth engine, if you've ever been a sales leader in one of those organizations, you, especially in the channel, so if like you have like a nationwide or global network of resellers that you depend on for new business, and your salespeople are channel salespeople, you learn really fast that a sales engine that is not backed by a customer success retention well-oiled engine itself is set up for incredible friction. So I can recall back to when I was in the cloud services game and I led a channel team to recruit partners to sell our products and services. I became really great friends with the team that would onboard our partners and the people that would be managing their accounts and working closely with our partners on the day-to-day after the ink had dried, because nothing sucked the wind out of my sales more than bringing on a partner or a prospect and then getting looped into that unfortunate email or that phone call a month later, 2 months later, saying, what the heck? Where are you? Or why is this the case? And so then you learned when there were people that took good care of your partners and that took very good care of your prospects and deals and opportunities after they were sold, man, they became your hero. They became your best friend. So the real ones know that, yeah, the top of the funnel is key. Bringing new logos in is key. But if there's a massive hole in the bottom of the pond, it's all for naught. So I think this is really timely.
Makes sales harder. Yeah.
All right. So before we transition into a little more meat and potatoes here of this conversation, if you're watching this today, whether you're watching it live on LinkedIn or YouTube right now, or you're scrolling through and watching a recording back later, I'd like to hear from you. Okay. The majority of our viewers, historically speaking, have been IT service providers, technology vendors, whether it's security, compliance, AI, automation, a handful of IT business decision makers sometimes will stumble into these calls. I'd like to learn a little bit more about who's watching. So if you want to and feel comfortable, say hi, say where you're from, and most importantly, what it is you do. And let us know if this idea of customer success and retention is relevant to you. Would love to hear what your experience has been. And most importantly, this question we have scrolling: how do you know which clients will leave you this year? Now, I want to hear from people in the chat. And if we hear from you, great. If not, Joseph and I will answer this ourselves. But let's start off with this. Lay the status quo for me, Joseph, as you see it in the technology industry right now. Like, what are the things you're seeing that give you heartburn or like you wish were different, and this is why you exist? What's the status quo?
So 2 things. Number one, we talked a lot about sales so far. And I think one of the sadder things I see happen a lot is the exact thing you talked about, which is sales does the really hard job. And let's include marketing, right? Marketing and sales do the incredibly difficult job of convincing someone who maybe knows nothing about you to actually buy from you. And then they get passed on to a team that's supposed to get them to success. And then it just sort of fizzles. There are myriad excuses that happen in those early days. Clients are busy. Well, they're busy with other priorities. They have scheduling conflicts. They're traveling. There are always myriad excuses about why customers can't engage, but it is our responsibility to guarantee their success. And I see too many. So number one is I see too many customers sort of left at the doorstep because of organizational complexity on the customer side and a sort of lack of interest in owning that organizational complexity and helping the customer navigate that. But that is, to me, our responsibility as customer success or customer service or whatever you want to call the post-sale folks. Like, we have to be with the customer in this, aligned with them 100%. And their problems are our problems. And we have to shuttle them through that complexity and get them to the point of value, measurable value, as soon as humanly possible. And I see that not happen a lot. Second thing, when that does happen, and there are quite a few companies I come across that, by the nature of what they do, are very good at getting customers up and running immediately, because it is some critical core business process. And like, if it doesn't get up and running in 30, 60 days, like, there's a major problem. Mm-hmm. So companies get really good at that initial motion, and then they get bad at the rest of it, which is like, once someone's up and running, like, they hired you for a reason. And that's so right. How much authority and expertise do you bring to the customer relationship to guide them on this journey of more and more and more and more value?
That's right.
And in too many cases, I would say in the majority of cases, the relationship becomes, like, if it's fairly involved at the beginning, becomes much less strategic and much less prescriptive and much less authoritative after the customer's up and running. And that's just us, like, sacrificing the relationship to whatever whims happen in the org down the road. So to your question, scrolling at the bottom, is like you have to control that relationship. I always say they hired you for a reason, because of your expertise, even if it's, whether it's product or service, or it doesn't really matter. Like, they hired you for expertise that they don't have, and you need to lean into that and have that guide and govern the relationship.
Absolutely. There's so much here to unpack. Some key words: control. You have to control the relationship. You have to be aligned with their expectations, actually understanding what they, and then point of measurable value. Mm-hmm. Powerful statements. Before I say anything else, Matt Holcomb, my congratulations and condolences simultaneously on your startup, my man.
Well done.
Would love, and so Matt's here in Greenville in my own backyard, does lead gen. Dude, so you're in a tough industry when we talk about customer retention and talk about point of measurable value and aligning with expectations. I don't know your background, Matt, and if this is your first time into a venture of this nature or not, but I'd love to hear your opinion on, like, what needs to happen to keep a client in your world. I'd love to hear from you, Matt. So feel free to share your perspective on that. I'm going to tell you a story, Joseph, that you'll appreciate, that I think validates a lot of what you're saying. So I'll go back to my cloud services days, right? And we worked fairly heavily with managed IT providers to resell cloud infrastructure, backup, disaster recovery, cybersecurity solutions, connectivity solutions, those types of things. And the onboarding experience, you talk about, like, this idea of control and who's controlling the experience. In my perspective, and from like running the team that recruited these partners, the experience that the partner had was largely determined on whether or not they had an active opportunity to bring to us in the moment or not. And I'll give you an example. We might go to IT Nation or DattoCon or to a IT show somewhere and have a great conversation with an MSP. Say, well, hey, we should be your strategic partner for cloud, backup, DR, et cetera, et cetera. And they get all excited about it. And we book a meeting, right? So we'd book an intro call for after the event, and they'd show up and they're all pumped. We're going to show them how we're going to make them money, save them time, and we're doing all the right sales things, right? And then they'd be like, yes, I will sign. They'd even sign a commitment to certain revenue tiers with us. And we commit to, within 60 days, we're going to sell X. And if they didn't have an active sales opportunity in the funnel right then and there when they signed as a partner, great. The ink dried, and maybe there would be a couple interactions afterwards, showing them a demo here, XYZ. But then oftentimes those partners would vanish into the ether, and we would never hear from them again. But you contrast that heavily with, hey, I've got a customer right now that we're migrating from AWS to private cloud, or we're getting them off of their own on-premise infrastructure, and we want to move them to private cloud, or we're switching from this backup provider to possibly you guys. And if there was a deal of any relevance at all of a sudden, it was not just about getting them to sign a partner commitment. It was like, we are going to give these guys some significant attention because we need them to not just sign, but to bring this customer into the fold. And that always bothered me, that the experience of the partner was conditional. Now, it wasn't intentionally built that way. It's just what was happening. So help me triage that, Joseph. What was missing? I have my own thoughts, but I want to hear from you. What was missing out of that? What could have been different, should have been different, in your opinion?
Yeah, there's this, there is this common, I show this pyramid sort of structure a lot to clients that shows this pyramid, which is sort of stacking levels of increasing what I call value realization up for clients. And what that pyramid shows is like there's a basic foundational level, which is around usage, utilization, adoption, enablement. And then the thought is above that, that's foundational. But if I can get someone adopted, utilizing, trained, enabled, like then what happens is, what's supposed to happen the level above is that business process changes inside the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And then if business process changes, the thing that's happened above that is that you'll see KPIs shift in the business.
Yeah.
And then if KPIs shift, the level of that is the actual point of realization, where someone goes, wait a second, what is driving that result? Then maybe in your situation, it's like, well, and so the question becomes like, how do you actually drag someone up that pyramid? How do you not just stay at this lower level of like, I don't know, for a partner, right? It's like bring a partner on, and the idea is we're going to get them enabled to then go be a really good partner.
That's right.
But I don't take them all the way to that first deal where like that proves success. Like, okay, now you were actually a valid partner, and we've proven that.
That's
because
right.
what I did, if I did that, is I actually didn't just focus on, okay, let's throw a bunch of enablement at that and then go hope they're successful. But let's throw the enablement and then make sure they integrate that into their business and sales process. And then let's make sure that drives a result in the business, which in that case has to be like, it's a sales process, right? It has to be like a deal or sale or something closed, business closed.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the thing that someone there is going to realize, oh, wow, this actually worked. Like,
that's right. Can
we go 10x this? And the answer is yes, because we just proved that it's possible. But in that pyramid example, and I'm sorry, I'm making a visual with my hands that I don't have in front of us, but like this idea that there's building layers of value, you can't just sit at this bottom layer, which is around, awareness and enablement and sort of that initial phase. You have to actually manage the partner or the customer through that process to make sure they get that a point of realized value. And at that point, you can then maybe rely on hope as a strategy because you've at least proven the business case to them. But like sales goes through so much effort around like this whole idea of the business case and the pain points and sort of solving the pain point and having a use case and a business case. And then for some reason that gets forgotten once they become a customer. We're like, well, we'll leave that up to the customer to figure out. Like, well, no. We have to make sure the promise of that use case is actually realized in the business, and the right person in the business realizes it, not just that we hope that it takes effect. And somehow we create some little brush fire that maybe works through the customer and has some impact. That whole stuff, that whole thought process is lunacy to me, but it happens all the time.
Well, there's two words that you said. One that you said like 5 or 6 times just now that really stand out to me. The first one you said was drag. How do we drag them up this pyramid?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to that. The second one you said was realize. And you said like realize the point of value, realize, you mentioned it 4 or 5 times. That moment of realization, what you're talking about is the light bulb moment for the customer or the partner where they're like, oh, wait, this is what the guy in sales was telling me all about the whole time. Or maybe it wasn't. Hopefully it was. It's them. Hopefully those match. But it's like, oh my, I get it now. I get it. And when the customer gets it, when the partner gets it, they will self-manage, right? They will self-manage. They will be like, I'm fully adopted. I've drank the Kool-Aid deeply. I'm fully invested as a customer. And I'm not saying you should neglect them, but they need less management than that person early on when it's more fragile. And then that brings me back to that first word you said, drag, where I see a lot of disconnect between sales and enablement / customer success is this idea of proactive management of the experience, right? It's like, oh, you signed up. We gave you everything you need in sales. Now go and do the things. It's like, hold on. Let's work on this collaboratively and let's, take you from here to there. Now, I want to address what I believe is maybe an elephant in the room. Because if you're watching this back now or the recording later, you maybe have sat through a customer success call. You may have watched a sales enablement video or been told to take a course or whatever that just maybe didn't do it for you. Some people say customer success, they say retention, they say sales enablement or customer enablement, and then it manifests itself in maybe busy work or low value, time wasting academia that the customer or partner didn't sign up for, or that truly isn't valuable. I've seen it. Have you seen that? How does it make you feel? What's the answer to it?
All the time. We see that all the time. And the problem, to get to the root cause is we tend to treat the customer like a singular entity. Like I just need to get them information and then they will figure out how to be successful with that. But the truth is that there's more nuance to it. And it's not overly complex, but the truth of the matter is there are people at let's take your example of bringing on a new partner, right? Who's going to resell like IT services. At that partner, there are salespeople who need to go do sales work and pretty much have a day job doing that already. Now you're introducing some new facet. So what they really need is all of this enablement that we talked about. And it's like, how do I be successful at this new process that's being introduced when I already run process every day to do this? There's that level. There's a sales manager who owns these reps and runs the sales process as a whole.
That's right.
And that person needs a different level of enablement. Like, how do I check that this is happening? What systems and reporting do I use to make sure the sales process is running well? And maybe a little bit of how do I watch my resources to make sure. But then that sales manager has a VP of sales or a chief revenue officer or someone else who's not worried about any of that. Is just worried about the strategy and the approach. And it's probably the person that decided this partner arrangement would be really beneficial to us, but is never going to be involved in the mechanics. And when you treat the customer as a singular entity that just needs to be enabled, it ignores the fact that there's some tactical work at the sales rep level that has to happen.
Yep.
There's some managerial ownership of this process. And then I really need to also speak CRO speak around the impact this is going to have to the business.
That's right.
And I need to manage all three of those levels. And that almost never happens. And I do think it's as easy as the 3 levels, but that complexity gets ignored a lot. And you're not talking strategically with the upper layer and tactically with the lowest layer to make sure all of that's being handled. Because if you just enable reps on their own, they're probably going to fall back to habit. And then sometimes what happens is you have a really good champion
That's right.
that overcomes that friction to the point about dragging and makes sure that happens. But then the CRO leaves and a new CRO comes in and he has another favorite vendor he likes to work with. So then all that gets changed out because no one really understood the business case and the impact we were having. So you really need to manage those multiple levels in that. And those are often also different roles on the business side. I mean, there are different roles for us to manage in customer success.
I can totally see that. Earlier, you had said something to the effect of integrating it into their process, right? And they're never going to do that when you are treating them like an individual. You're treating your customer, which is a business, like an individual. And it's easy to see why when you take two steps back and look at it for the bigger picture, right? You've got the person that you met at a trade show or through a cold call or through a referral, and it's an individual. That's a person, okay? And it might even be the owner, the CRO. It might be the decision maker. It might be the guy who's going to sign the contract. It could be that guy. But it's just that guy. And when you're having the sales conversation, man, sparks are flying and the guy's getting it. He's picking up what you're putting down, and you go off from the trade show and then you have a follow-up conversation with them. And man, the conversation's good. It's vibing really well. He sees the value. He's shared the pain with you, and you make the sale. And then on the other side of that, that's the guy that represents 100 guys or 50 guys or 250 guys. And he was never going to own what happens next.
No.
And even if he does, if you are not integrating at those three different layers, then you're setting up fail points in the customer experience, I would imagine, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's hard to believe that we're running out of time already. I want to drag Matt's answer to my question because he was kind enough to give us some insight here. So as far as like avoiding that, answering the question, how do you know which ones will leave you this year? Alignment is big for us in the discovery process. We make sure we can align with expectations and deliver value. If it's not clear, we typically do not take on these clients. The fit is important. We have an ICP that we spent some time developing. So your ideal customer, ensuring alignment. I definitely see a lot of truth in that statement, Joseph. That's part of it, right? How can you effectively manage an experience that both parties didn't agree to?
Yeah, and I think, Matt's point on ICP is well taken. Having been at 5 separate startups and scale-ups, the thing I'll tell Matt is that's great, but unfortunately it's going to change. And so having lived through this a lot, ICP focus is eminently important. Like, I'm not going to minimize that at all. You always need to be figuring out in what segment of population can I drive the most value and how can I focus on that? Mm-hmm. The truth is it's probably going to change a little bit. Mm-hmm. And you're always going to have decent portions of your pipeline and decent segments of customers that are not ICP. And at the end of the day, that cannot be an excuse. Like, you still have to try to drive value in the clients you have, because pipeline and customer base will always be somewhat non-ICP to some degree. And your survival just depends on also meeting the needs of those other segments of clients. So being really strategic with customers and leaning into that friction we talked about and making sure you're managing the multiple stakeholders is the thing that gets you out of that. And this gets back to, I think, the piece of this question down below that, like, how do you know? Well, if I have a good stakeholder map and I'm really driving business outcomes and I hold myself accountable to that, I'll know if we're not able to do that at some point. And at that point, I can predict that client is probably going to churn at some point. But at least I'll know that and I can plan for it.
Oh, man, there's so much more that we could share and we could say, and we're just about at time right now. If you're watching, now is your chance. You've got the experts online. And feel free to drop a comment later if you're watching the recording back later, and Joseph or myself or both of us will respond to your comment. But you have us at your disposal. So if you're dealing with high churn, poor customer experience, or this big gap between sales, onboarding, and retention, this is your opportunity to ask Joseph, what if, how would you handle X? What would you do for Y, et cetera, et cetera. I want to spend our last few moments before we kind of wrap up here, specifically on the question, what are the key indicators I should be looking for in my client base so that I could intelligently predict where I'm providing a less than great experience, where I have risk of churn? What should I be looking for? Because I've got a few opinions, and they may not be what most people immediately think of.
So the challenge is going to be, it's probably two things you're not thinking about as much as you should be. And I think most people would go toward usage, utilization, some kind of like indication that there's activity happening, whatever that activity is, appropriately so for your customer, your partner, et cetera. And I think that's relevant. I don't think it's irrelevant, but I don't think that's where you're going to be surprised. The two areas you're going to be surprised is, number one, you don't really know how your customer or partner measures the success of your relationship. I had a larger client than I typically work with. And in 2/3 of their customers, when we looked at them, and these were like enterprise software sales, in 2/3 of the customers, they did not have a good business outcome identified. In other words, they didn't really know what the client looked at as success for this investment they were making. Sizable investment, which is shocking on the one hand, maybe not on the other. But so I think that I tell you, number one, know what your customer expects from you in measurable terms. And you have to know at the right level, back to that strategy. I need to know that decision maker, exec sponsor, right, buyer persona. I need to know what that person thinks about success. Number two, I probably don't know who that real sponsor, buyer, exec persona is, and I should go figure that out. Those are the two things. Like, exec sponsorship is usually weak, and business outcome identification and management is usually weak. And those two things are necessary for long-term success.
I'm writing it down so I can pop it on screen. The thing you said that I think is most valuable that people need to hear. All right, I'm going to put this up here. Know what your customer expects in measurable terms. So so expectation, alignment, we've mentioned that a couple times now, but translating it into something measurable, because until it's measurable, how can you know if you are achieving it or not? You cannot measure feelings and sentiment. In fact, before we even went live, Joseph, do you remember the conversation we had about without structure and knowing what productivity looks like? It's possible to keep a client happy for a while by making them feel good, like they like you. They like you, and that client might stick around because they value the relationship. But at some point, the customer-provider relationship needs to achieve that point of measurable value that you said earlier. And if you don't know what that point of measurable value is, how can you know if you're achieving it or not? So, A, do you know what your customer expects? Do you know what that point of measurable value is? And then that's the first thing to solve if you don't know. You got to go find out. And spoiler alert, you can just ask them.
Yes.
You don't have to guess.
Yes, you don't have to guess.
All right. Final thoughts from you, Joseph, before we roll into a wrap up here?
No, and just realize that I think, Jonathan, you hit on a great point. Is like, don't let perfection be the enemy of excellence in this. Just go have this conversation with the client. Be prepared for the fact that you may be talking to the wrong person. But the answer to this will tell you if you are. But at least you've started the cycle of asking the right question. And that may help you figure out if you're talking to the right people or not. But the point is, you need to start somewhere, and this is a great place to start.
I love that. We're landing on a very practical, tactical next step that if you're watching this right now, you can go do this today. You can start this initiative this quarter. And then once you understand that point of measurable value, now you have something by which to evaluate the relationships you have with your customers. And thereby you'll know, whoa, we are way off with customer A. We are not even close to that point of measurable value. And then maybe customer B, well, we're crushing it. We are way beyond it. They couldn't be happier. Now you can start making intelligent decisions about how you manage those expectations, the systems and processes you put. What are we doing for customer B that's working so well? Does that need to happen for customer A? Yeah. Now you can make data-driven decisions in your retention growth engine. I love it.
Correct.
I love it. Okay, so what I want to see happen next, Joseph, you've been a pleasure to have on the show. I'm so grateful for your time that you've shared with us. Briefly share with our viewers a little bit about Retention CX. And if they wanted to have a conversation with you after today, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Sure. Retention CX is really geared toward the earlier stage business, somewhere between, say, 1 and 10 million in revenue, who's looking to grow and wants to do that planfully and predictably and profitably. If you do, then you owe it to yourself to really focus on the customer base and the revenue base you have and use that as a growth engine for the rest of the business, right? The best way to get in touch with me, you can go to my website at retentioncx.com. One of the things I've done over the past couple of years that ended up being really valuable was a bit of an assessment. If you're just curious about what the impact could be, go to retentioncx.com/free assessment. There's a little form you fill out. I'll get back to you. We'll spend an hour on the phone and I'll show you exactly where there could be improvement in the business. And then we can extrapolate what that would mean in terms of financial outcome. At least then you're informed.
I'm grabbing the URL right now to put in the chat. All right, let's see here. retentioncx.com. I'm looking for the, is it the baseline survey? Is that the same thing?
It's /free assessment.
Free assessment. That's why.
All together.
There it is. Dropping this in the chat for our viewers on LinkedIn. Again, Joseph, a sincere pleasure to have you here today. I'm about to end the stream. For those of you who are watching, what you're about to see next is a little outro with the QR code and other places where if you appreciated this content today, you can follow us on multiple other channels where we regularly post and share content. And if you're watching the recording back later, don't feel like you can't comment and ask a question because these channels are all monitored fairly closely. And we want it to be valuable and meaningful for you. So thank you so much, everybody. We'll catch you all later and have a great rest of your day.